And welcome to another edition of the Kaufman Corner. And hate to say it, but really the topics today begin with, is this the most disappointing month in the history of Royals baseball? New general manager, new pitching coach, a feeling that maybe something was changing and the Royals were getting ready to take off. Instead, they're on pace for 123 wins. Does that make this the most disappointing month in Royals history? What about the Orioles and Pirates lapping the Royals? We discussed tanking to the chagrin of Rany Jazayerli last week. We'll get back into it a little bit. What is Bobby Witt Jr. ultimately going to be? What's wrong with Brady Singer? We break it all down right now on this week's edition of Kaufman Corner.
You're listening to Kaufman Corner, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany on the Royals, and former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Gann Asphalt and Concrete is now hiring for all positions: project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, and crew members. Starting pay up to $30 per hour based on experience, with paid time off and insurance, just to name a few of the benefits. Check out GannAsphalt.com for more info. Now, here's your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
Back at it because we care, wondering how many other people do and how much we should. The good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, Soren Petro with you. It is Kaufman Corner, proudly brought to you, as you heard, by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Best in the business, Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Royals fans, all things suffering. Rany, is this the worst month? There was optimism coming out. You and I stupidly predicted 77 wins, and here they sit barreling.
What were you thinking, Soren? Whatever you were thinking, whatever you were thinking was the same thing I was thinking, but I have no idea what you were thinking 1 month into the season.
I said for 39 wins. I was giving them 10 extra. They're on pace for 39 wins. What were we thinking, and is this a new low?
It's certainly a new kind of low. They've had lots of lows, so I don't want to say it's the lowest they've ever been. 2005, 2006 certainly felt more helpless. 2018, 2019, the team was worse than they are now. But when you talk about a month in the history of the Kansas City Royals, which has forced us to reconsider what we thought we knew about the organization, this ranks pretty highly. I mean, when you talk about worst months, I mean, it depends on how you define it. You could define the worst month as October 1977, because the Royals went into October with the best record in baseball and lost to the Yankees in the first round of the playoffs. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about you thought the team was one thing, and it turns out they were not that thing. They were nowhere close to that thing. Let's start here. Losingest months in the history of the Kansas City Royals. All right, it's April 30th. The Royals are 7-22? Do I have that right? Sometimes I look at I feel like I'm misremembering, because it's not possible that's 87-22, but they're 7-22.
Yeah.
Now, I think they lost one of those games technically in March, so you could say it's a 21 loss season, 21 loss month. Although by the standard is that you lump March and April together, just like September and October together. If you go to Baseball Reference, that's how they do it. 22 losses would be the most losses in the history of the franchise in 1 month. The only month that matches that was September of 1974. But technically, two of those losses were in October, actually, as well. That was a season the Royals went into September 4 games behind the Oakland A's with designs on their first ever playoff spot, finished under 500. Certainly that was a disappointing month, but that I don't think that quite compares. September, you already know what the team is for 130 games. Here we had no record to fall back on. There was no wins and losses in the bank. We started it fresh, and we came out with the worst record. I mean, one game better than the A's right now. The A's, who are the worst pitching staff in the history of baseball, potentially, and they're one game behind the Royals. There's not a lot of competition for it. I mean, the closest comps I can think of, certainly this century, you've got April of 2012. The Royals went 6-15. That was, I believe, that was the year that Luke Hochevar got booed off the mound like 7 minutes into opening day. You may remember that. After the Royals had the best farm system in baseball the year before, and Eric Hosmer and Moustakas and Duffy and Salvi, all those guys have come up the year before. 6-15 isn't quite the same thing as 7-22, especially since in May, I believe the Royals immediately started to win. Yeah, they went from 6-15. They actually got up to 15-20. By the time they got to 21 losses, they had 15 wins. The Royals have 22 losses and 7 wins. There's also May of 2013. If you want to look for something positive here, the Royals went into May of 2013. They actually got up to 17-10 early in May, and then they went 6-22 to fall to 23-32. This was, that was the year that the fans started to really turn on the front office until they started winning late in the year, and they got above 500 and finished with their first winning record in a decade, went to the World Series the next year. So if you're looking for a positive month, potential outcome here, you could look at May of 2013. But even then, they had come off a winning month before that. And they righted the ship quickly. This, you and I went into the season thinking this is the year they started to turn from rebuilding to, if not contending, at least putting together the opening touches on a contending ball club. And 1 month into the season, you and I are both like, do we need to blow this up, start all the way back at square zero, 6 years in the 6th season of a rebuilding project? That is really devastating.
Well, and I've been asking it, that question for a while. Let's hold that thought. I want to offer a month, because you talk about disappointing. We've had a lot of people talk about it. That Matt said, "Hey, I didn't have this team that good. I only picked them for 65 wins. And even I've had enough of it already." I get that. But we picked 77 wins, not 87 wins. I would just to take a moment to go down memory lane. And for those of you that aren't old enough, bear with me for a second. In 1989, the Kansas City Royals were 92-70. For me, that's always a big year because I went to 42 home games before I went away to college. Nice. To go to Syracuse in late August. And that was my summer of Royals, right? It was like my senior.
Good year to pick. That was sort of my summer of Royals too, listening on radio. And I was a few years younger than you, but that's the year that really cemented me as a fan. So that was a really good year. I know where you're going with this.
Yeah. And so it was a great year to be a Royals fan. They won 92 games. George Brett was still playing at a high level. Bo Jackson was one of the hottest things going. It was the SportsCenter lead. It was great. And the Royals made all these signings, and they got Storm Davis. They got Mark Davis. They had the reigning Cy Young winner from both leagues. Mark Davis came over as the closer of the Padres, won the Cy Young. And Brett Saberhagen was the reigning AL Cy Young. And they had it looked like it was all there to take that step. It was really towards the end of Mr. Kaufman's life, and he was saying, all right, one last hurrah. I want to win one more championship in my lifetime. And they came out of the gates and just fell flat and couldn't get it going. Mm-hmm. And they would kind of rebound and get a little something. They brought in Wally Joyner, and that was devastating because for me personally, I was out, talking smack to people on the East Coast, and here my team lays an egg coming out of the gates and was never in it. And really, that was, for the most part, the last time that they would effectively contend. Right, was 89 was the last time, and that kind of signaled that became that stumbling out of the gate kind of became the signature of what they were, moving forward. So I would offer that up that may have been more disappointing, but again, tallest pygmy, who cares? right? Like at the end of the day, too much misery, too long in the rebuild process here. And this one, I think you hit upon is like what we've talked about is like, are we talking about this thing going right back, tearing down what they've got? And it's why I keep coming to it. They don't have to decide it today, but they've got to decide it before the trade deadline, and they've got to be accurate. And I say it a million times. Sports is about being accurate as to who you are. If you don't accurately know who you are, you can't make the right moves. You can't produce the right game plan on Sundays in an NFL game. If you think you're going to throw it all over the yard when Brody Crowell's your quarterback, you're a dumbass. You should have looked in the mirror and said, we have to have another game plan, right? And when you're the Royals, like small market baseball, you have to be able to identify whether or not you're buying or selling, whether or not you're coming or going. They're going. And there's nothing, because we can talk about, a lot of folks have said, well, how about the minor league minute? Let's do all minor league minute. Why? So we can go look at Gavin Cross's substandard numbers and see that what was a promising start to his professional career has now turned south and isn't looking good. You want to see the multitude of pitchers that at one time have been thought of as somebody that the Royals can hang their hat on that are just outright awful right now in the minor leagues. Like turn to what? I mean, we can find the Caden Wallace. We can find some guys here and there. We will have a minor league minute. But like, if you look at it, I don't know how all that turns in the right direction. And you say, no, this core wins. And so if you're 3 years of rebuild, it's what I keep coming back to. And here's the worst part. Brady Singer's the piece you want to be able to trade. He's the one that should get you the most because he should be top of the rotations, material. And instead, he is backed up. I mean, the beeping you hear is Brady Singer's career, right? And by the way,
look at the bright side, Soren. Look at the bright side. They didn't give him a long-term contract this winter.
Well, they didn't do that, and they won an arbitration. So the boo-hoo about the extra $300,000 that didn't go Brady Singer's way, settle down, people. I mean, yeah. So it's the frustration is organizational more so. Maybe then we weren't as hip to. You guys at Baseball Prospectus hadn't done everything you've done. We weren't as hip to all the elements that go into it, into building an organization. And so maybe we didn't think, we just thought, well, there'll be some young guys that come up. And I go back to 1990, like, oh, there'll be some, we always have a couple of guys that come up. We'll see. There'll be another star. That's what the Royals do. We were spoiled by it. So maybe I can find a month, but not like this. Organizationally, it's really frustrating.
No, I love that you brought up April of 1990 because in retrospect, looking back at the 50+ year history of the franchise, that month really was the fulcrum on which the Royals turned from model franchise in baseball, basically from the time they started, to, well, maybe the worst run franchise in baseball over the next 25, now maybe 35 years. Like you said, they went 92 games the year before. They had what people thought was the best offseason of anything. They made Mark Davis the wealthiest, the highest paid contract in the sport. The Kansas City Royals had, going into 1990, the Kansas City Royals had the highest payroll in baseball. They gave a reliever the biggest contract in the sport, which was a bad idea because he was a reliever, but at least he was a good reliever until the minute he put on a Royals uniform. They also gave Storm Davis a ridiculous contract that the 14-year-old sabermetrician in me knew was insane because they gave him that based on how many games he had won for the A's the year before. But still, nobody expected what happened. I'm looking at the record. It was a short month. They started late in April, so technically they were 6-12. They actually fell to 6-16. But when you look at what happened, that month was a harbinger of really the next 2 decades at least of Royals baseball. They were no longer the team that could do nothing wrong. They were no longer sort of the Cardinals on the west side of the state. They were something different. So yeah, that's a terrifying comparison. But I think at the time, at least, I don't know if we'd say we were that as disappointed as we are now because we were all in denial. Like nobody knew that the franchise that was so well run as recently as the year before had lost its way. So which brings us to where we are now. And the question we have, we've talked about this since the start of the season. Is it the coaching or is it the talent? And more, you have to think it's the talent. And they didn't do anything to address the talent or the way they decide on the talent this offseason. And I mean, we're not even into May. I'm not calling for anybody's job yet, but JJ Picollo has to be playing for his job this year. I really did not expect a month into the season that we would be talking about his job security. But what else is left? Because when we talk about the teams that have gone through this rebuilding process and are now winning, when you look at the Baltimore Orioles, you look at the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Orioles, I believe, are 19-9 after winning today. The Pirates are 20-9. The Pittsburgh Pirates are 20-9. They were the laughing stock of the sport a few years ago. So were the Orioles. And this gets back to the tanking discussion that you and I had last week, which we were kind of talking past each other. So I kind of want to just readdress that, because if the Royals decided today and announced they're going to tank, like not use those words necessarily, but if they made the conscious decision to tank, honestly, I would be on board with it. My issue with the idea of tanking isn't that they should or should not tank. It's that you shouldn't have to tank in order to succeed. Like the Royals, even if they weren't trying to tank, they essentially were 80% tanking. They didn't tank any less than the Orioles or the Pirates did. If you look at like where they were drafting, because that's ultimately what we're talking about. When we're talking about quote unquote tanking, it's about trying to get as high in the draft as possible. The Baltimore Orioles and the Pittsburgh Pirates, going back to 2019, right? The Royals had, let's look, where did the Royals pick? The Royals have had a number 2, a number 4, a number 7, and a number 9 overall pick, right? 4 top 10 picks in the draft. All right, the Orioles have had 4. Now they've drafted 1, 1, 2, and 5. Okay, so you're thinking they're drafted a lot higher. But the only one of those guys who's even reached the major leagues is Adley Rutschman. And Adley Rutschman is awesome and amazing. They got him with the first pick in the draft. The Royals took Bobby Witt with the second pick in the draft. I don't think the problem was that the Royals weren't taking. I think the problem was the Orioles have turned Adley Rutschman into an all-star caliber catcher. The Royals are still trying to figure out what the hell Bobby Witt is. And then you look at the Pirates. The Pirates haven't drafted any higher than the Royals. They've drafted 1st, 4th, and 7th. They've had fewer top 10 picks than the Royals. None of the guys in the top 10 have reached the major leagues yet. They haven't had a first-round draft pick reach the major league since their 2018 pick. These teams are doing it without top 10 picks. They're doing it in other ways. The one thing they do have in common that the Royals don't have, both teams turned over their front office. Both teams cleaned house, fired everybody there basically, and brought in guys with championship experience. The Pirates hired Ben Sherrington to be their general manager. He won the World Series as the general manager of the Red Sox. He had been there for like 12 years, won multiple World Championships under Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer before that. The Orioles brought in Mike Elias from the Houston Astros. He was the assistant general manager when they won the World Series and went through the mother of all rebuilding projects. And you know what? It was ugly there in Baltimore for a while. They had worse records than the Royals did. But look at what those teams have done. But they had to clean house in order to do it. And if this is where the trajectory of the Royals are. The Royals, look, it's April 30th. Nobody's losing their job now. Nobody deserves to lose their job now. If they bounce back and they get to 70 wins, then maybe this conversation is a moot point. But if they lose 100 games this year, it's going to be hard to justify not doing what the Orioles and the Pirates have done.
Well, I'll disagree because I think the reason you make decisions about what you're going to do, you do it when you're of sound mind and not feeling the pain and anguish or the joy. You know, like Brent Rooker's name keeps coming up. Everyone's excited because Brent Rooker was with the Royals. And what about Brent Rooker? 10 minutes from now, call me back. If Brent Rooker goes on to hang a 1.178 OPS for the season, okay. Right. But he's bounced from team to team to team, has been a career minor leaguer that's having a hot stretch with the A's. Brent Rooker is not the key to success.
I don't know if he's a key, but he is. I mean, he's kind of a red flag. The Royals.
Yeah, but wait a minute. Hang on.
Let him go.
Whoa. Come on. Give me a second here. Because you went through 10 different things for 5 minutes. Don't make me chase my tail, because we're not doing the Jacob Junis minute anymore. And he was the red flag. He was the canary in the coal mine, and he sucks now. Okay. So 10 minutes of success on some other team does not equal holy crap, this is the guy that ruined us. All right. He's been a journeyman his entire career. When he has more than 66 at-bats, 82 plate appearances, call me. Okay. Settle the blank down about Rooker. All right. And somebody else wants to talk about what's he, the first baseman that got called up, who's running around the outfield for the Royals, the former first
Prado.
Prado. Settle down about that too. Yes, Grady's had a few good games. The back of his minor league baseball card will tell you a lot of what to expect. All those things. Baseball is not something that decisions are made. Jacob Junis is not an ace. Okay, he's not. And the Royals at this point appear to have missed out on not much. Early on, good signs, but the longer he's been out on the mound, the more he's turned back into Jacob Junis. Okay. So getting excited about Rooker or anybody else, calm down. All right. Just settle down. And when it comes to firing JJ, if you set course that the man is going to be the guy, I said I will give him a year. That's all the way through getting to
I agree.
next year, coming out of spring training. Let me see what the team is,
Okay.
giving him a trade deadline, giving him an off season. So at one point in there, you said, well, I don't know if they lose 100 losses, what you can do. You can sit tight and stick to your original plan. And it's not what anybody wants to hear. Everybody wants to talk about it. You know, everyone's got tough talk. We've said it a million times. No battle plan survives combat, right? Everybody's a badass till they get punched in the face. And then what do? You're getting punched in the face right now. You had a plan for a reason because you know that you don't turn a franchise. If you thought it was bad enough to fire these other people that were involved, you know that a guy is not going to wave a wand in one off season. Would I like to have seen him do more? Yes, I would. Do I think it's trending that way? Yes. Do I think JJ Piccolo is going to see the end of his 3 years or 4 years on his contract, whatever he's got? No, I don't. It's not going in the right direction. But it is not time to fire him or anybody else.
I not only agree, but that I literally said that like 2 minutes ago. But I will say this: I think we
If they
both
lose 100 games, it is not time to fire him.
I think that when we both said over the offseason that he, unlike a new GM who almost certainly will get 2 threes, that he deserves 1 year. I think the difference is when I said 1 year, I meant the season. But like if the season is a disaster, I'm not giving him another off season necessarily. That might be where you and I differ. But I will agree that he deserves, like you said, a trading deadline, another draft, et cetera, et cetera. And when I say disaster, if they lose 100 games, but like everybody in the minor leagues is starting to hit it, like
hang on, because I just want to highlight something. A draft, not another draft, a draft. He has not had a draft yet. So if you're saying he deserves another draft, then he deserves all the way to a year from this June, right? Because, and again, if he has a good draft and they lose 120 games, first of all, how do you even know if he's had a good draft 2 months into it? But if you like the returns on it, are you going to because this, what is on the field is not what JJ put in this organization as the head man. Again, it's a sticky situation, and it's not one that I would be in. If I would have fired Dayton Moore, I would have blown the whole thing up. I'd say it time and time again. Even when things are going well, hiring the second in command is a bad idea. It's a bad idea.
Well,
that's on this. You have to accept responsibility for what you put on the man's plate and not be shocked that he didn't turn chicken crap into chicken salad.
Right. And the fact that they did bring the second in command in after a lack of success is why we're having this very difficult conversation, which is how much time do you give this guy? Yes, if you're saying it's not his mess, it's not entirely his mess. It's not mostly his mess, but it's partly. I mean, he was second in command. Like we're saying, well, it wasn't his draft. Well, he's been second in command in this organization for 15 years. Now he's in charge. I at least need to see some sign that he is better, some sign that he is heading in the right direction, in a different direction than they were. They're heading in the wrong direction.
You wanted a new pitching coach.
Mm-hmm.
He gave you a new pitching coach.
Yes, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think there are reasons for optimism. The problem right now is that the offense is the worst offense in baseball. That's the thing I did not.
Was anybody upset with the moves that they made as far as the hitting coach went?
No, but they did that before. That they did that under Dayton Moore. Alex Zumwalt came in under Dayton Moore, and I don't think Alex Zumwalt's the problem. Which means
as an
the
interim.
talent the problem?
And then, okay, and I agree with you. Well, first of all, I'm not convinced that Zumwalt isn't the problem, because he was the reason. The only reason anybody wants to say he's not the problem is because everybody's been championing him for 6 months, and it'll mean that we made a mistake if we suddenly say, well, Zumwalt might be the problem. That's what I don't like. There's all these themes. The theme is Cal Eldred. Okay, get rid of Cal Eldred, it'll all be fixed. Oh, now it's not fixed. Yeah, because the problem has always been overarching. And that's why I come back to, if you want to relive the tanking, blow it up. Right? And when I talk about trading Brady Singer, everybody freaks out. Right? Like, oh my God, how could he's the one guy, he's the guy you don't trade. He's the only guy with value coming into this year.
No.
And so,
of course, he's the guy. He's the guy if you're blowing it up, he's one of the first guys you trade. A pitcher, because he's not going to be valuable by the time you start winning. And
right,
as a pitcher, he could lose it at any moment, as we have just seen.
The most damaging thing from that JJ Piccolo has said is in his opening press conference. He was asked by one person about why making the changes with the manager, and he said, we had expectations that were higher than this. We didn't live up to it. And then when asked about the future, he said, well, clearly we're heading towards losing 100 games or around 100 games. We've obviously got a ways to go. Well, which is it? And Danny Klingscale asked him that question. Which is it? I mean, are you close or are you not? And his answer was a word salad that didn't eliminate either one of them. That's the problem. It starts there. And everyone's saying, well, the drafting's a problem. Of course it is. The development's a problem. Of course it is. Both, one, the other, I don't know. I don't care. But some serious change has to be made. Now, is it a case where he has stepped into the job and said, all right, I need to work with these guys. I want to implement new approaches, new systems to how we're going to do it. And at the end of this year, or even right after the draft, they're going to get to it because scouts are out doing their things now, talking to families, getting money on the table, figuring out where things are. You can't just, fire everybody right now. So you get to the end of the draft, and does he go, okay, gone. Then this is what it takes, right? You're already halfway to the draft when he takes over as the GM. That's not scout hiring time. So all these things, the whole 1 year cycle has to happen before you see what has actually come about. So look, and then I don't know how, don't call it tanking, call it asset allocation. Because it's not, tanking is not just about getting higher draft picks. That's one of the things it is. It's about trading good players that are good now for good players in the future.
Right.
That's a part of it as well. It's not just get rid of everybody for nothing and then we're going to hang our hat on a couple of top 10 picks. That's not it. No one, I will state again, this franchise and no other small market franchise will ever draft their way to a competitive team. You do not have enough good players in each draft. You don't. And you can't just sign in Latin America. You have to start making trades. And until now, if we go through the trade deadline and JJ's done nothing, I'll be ready to hit the fast forward button at that point. But at some point, somebody's got to be worth trading. And who's worth trading right now?
Well, they had guys they could have traded this offseason. I mean, you mentioned Brady Singer. Okay, that's a little extreme, but I mentioned the whole Scott Barlow thing. Here's my issue. You talk about, okay, JJ hasn't had a chance. He hasn't had a draft. He hasn't had a trade in. Okay, he did have an offseason to sign free agents. He's the one to put Jackie Bradley on this roster. Is Jackie Bradley doing anything for this team?
He can catch the ball.
Okay, well,
others can't.
Okay, well, there are a lot of guys out in the minor leagues who can catch the ball who will hit more than like 140. All right, and who don't have three different.
Not in this minor league. Not in this minor league system because they called up a first baseman to play outfield.
Why are they doing that? You could argue, why are they doing that? Why they're playing a first baseman in right field so they can play their right fielder at catcher. That's why they're doing it. Okay, that's why they're doing it. Okay, and I'm going to come back. Look, we don't have to agree on things. We're not going to maybe agree on this. I keep coming back to this. What was the one move I could not accept this winter? Signing Jordan Lyles. 2 years, 17 million. What name did I bring up from Royals past? I brought up the name of Scott Ellerton. Scott Ellerton
he doesn't even matter, Randy. He was never. He's not the key to winning.
He's not the reason
26
they're
World
losing.
Series anyway.
But it is an incredible sign that this team does not know how to prioritize its resources. $17 million for what? Because he can throw innings? There's a certain level of talent at which the innings don't matter. If Scott Ellerton was signed to give the Royals innings. He ended up throwing 150 innings over 2 seasons. You know why? Because he got cut because he was so bad. And I said it when they signed Jordan Lyles. I do not expect him to be in the Royals rotation by the end of that contract. He might not be in the Royals rotation by the end of this year. Okay. It's only 6 starts. He could still turn it around, but it's telling me he's actually had two starts that were praiseworthy, and yet he leads the league in home runs allowed. He leads the league in runs allowed.
So who would put whoever you want on this team in place of Jordan Lyles, and it is not fixed. So why would you spend? Well, who do you want to sign? I mentioned Andrew Heaney.
I'm not saying who to sign. I'm saying
no, but that's the thing. It's just a bitch fest about a guy without the.
No, it's not. I'm not bitching about the guy.
Made.
I'm bitching about the front office who signed the guy. It says what is right. The front office that signs the player is the issue. Why did you spend $17 million on a player who doesn't help you move forward?
Because he would sign with your ball club.
That's not a reason to sign a guy.
So
that's
then who would you Randy, who would you pitch? If not him, then who? Who would you pitch instead?
Okay, the easy answer is anyone. But let me give you an example. You know why I know that signing a guy like this
top-out answer
is a bad idea for a tanking team, for a rebuilding team? Because when you look at other rebuilding teams that succeeded, they didn't do this. The 2013 Houston Astros, all right? The Astros had the worst record in baseball 3 years in a row. They brought in the new general manager after the first disaster year, and he stripped that organization clean of talent.
So you're not going to answer the question.
They needed tons of innings. The most expensive player on that roster made $3 million. 2013 Astros. Well, by the way, Jordan Lyles was on that team, which I think is hysterical. But the most expensive guy made $3 million. They had a bunch of crappy pitchers, but they were all on 1-year contracts. It's not even it's the 2 years because he wouldn't sign with us otherwise. Do you know what? Ryan Yarbrough signed. You're trying to you couldn't find another 1 year, one other pitcher out there that could sign for 1 year that you didn't have to commit, because it's not just the dollars, it's the roster spot. And again, Jordan Lyles is not the problem. It's the front office that signs a Jordan Lyles to a multi-year deal. That makes me nervous that they may not have what it takes.
I will come back around to the fact that they gave a bunch of lip service that people wanted to hear, that things are going in the right direction. And they looked at this team and said, it is a disaster. We are going to bottom out. We are going to lose more than 100 games. And we don't have anybody to really pitch. You can't give me a name. You won't give me a name of anybody that could pitch over Jordan Lyles. And so you look at the minor leagues. Everybody in the minor leagues is terrible. There's nobody that would do any better. Lyles has been a victim, as have all of the starting pitchers, he and Greinke, the most, of the buffoonery that goes on around them. And so if you looked at the team and you said, all right, we're not good. We're not going to catch it. We're probably not going to hit that well. Nobody else is really going to pitch it that well. So what do we want to do? We got a bunch of guys that we don't think are ready and maybe are never going to be ready, but we're going to try to fix them down in the minor leagues. Do we want to bring them up and get their brains beat in, or do we want to leave them down there and try to fix them? In the meantime, we need somebody to facilitate the game and not blow up to where we have to pitch Aroldis Chapman every day, because we want to try to get him traded to get something for it. And so we just need someone that, we don't care how bad it gets or how ugly the numbers are, we need him to take the ball every 5th day for 2 years. This is the only guy that will sign and do it. I mean, like the fixation that Jordan Lyles is the problem is, to me, so far down the list of where the issue, like come back to where you were on the drafting. Jordan Lyles, I don't care about Jordan Lyles. When they're ready to sign real free agents, no real free agent will sign with a team that looks like them, right? No Scott Boras client will sign here because he knows the team sucks. That's why Eric Hosmer went to the Padres. We're all happy because Hosmer didn't end up being anything. But the whole idea is they can look at the team and say, not any good. He looked at it and said, more money and the Padres are going to be good. No quality free agent is going to sign here. They're not going to do it. Not without the Royals grossly overpaying. And what did the Gil Mesh deal end up being? At the end of the day, when they were supposed to be turning the corner, he had blown out, like most pitchers do.
They blew him out. I can pinpoint the day they blew him out because everybody was saying Trey Hillman was blowing him out.
Yes,
let's put Gilmech aside.
But when the point is still, they signed a guy for big money, and they expected him to do it all because he was the only guy that was worth anything, and it blew up. They're not ready to sign anybody worth a damn.
Well, first, they also signed Edinson Volquez, who gave them exactly what they wanted. They signed Kendrys Morales, which was a risky bet coming off of a.
They were way down the road when they were signing Kendrys Morales and Edinson Volquez. They were not at the bottom of the barrel.
But you just said it. They couldn't sign Eric Hosmer. Eric Hosmer, they were coming off a 5-year stretch where they were competitive every single year. So either they can or they can't. If you're saying they can't.
And Scott Boras and his group looked at the Royals and said, this team is going to suck in 2 years. And you're going to be the only guy. You're going to be Mike Sweeney. And you know what? They're going to ride your ass right out of town. Now, they rode his ass right out of San Diego as well. But he said, over here, they're loaded. They're going to pay you, and they're loaded. Those guys are good. They looked at the Royals just like we looked at the Royals and said, it is going to be a nuclear winter. We all knew it. Now, did we expect to still be sitting here in 2023 in the midst of the nuclear winter? No. But we knew it, and they all know it now. We know this team. Why our dumbasses picked them to win 77 games, I don't know, because Matt was the only guy who's like, you guys are on crack. No way. This team's winning 65 games if you're lucky. I don't see it. And Matt was the only one who really fervently said, you guys are screwed. This isn't going to happen. Right? So all the ideas, take any pitcher that's signed with a team that's winning and cross him off. You want to find me a guy who's pitching well for a turd? Okay. The Royals could have been on that mix. But the idea that anybody who is pitching for a competitive team was going to sign on for this team, not without taking that deal, whatever they got times 2 minimum.
Then don't sign anybody. Just save the money.
Who?
You can literally sign a AAA free agent if you're
and
saying it doesn't matter.
But here's my point, Randy. And this team is better how? They're no further down the road. That's my point. You're worrying about the bombs are exploding, and you're worried about the finish on the back of the boat.
No. Bombs are exploding, and I'm worried about the guy in charge of the arsenal. It's not about the bombs exploding. It's not. He can go out there. He can do what Jose Lima did. Do you remember the year Jose Lima? They just kept throwing him out there every 5th day, and he just kept getting destroyed. They can do that with Jordan Lyles the rest of the season. It's not going to matter. It might be good for the organization.
Exactly. It's not going to matter. So why are you worrying about it?
I'm worried because of the thought process that went into signing him. We're talking past each other. It isn't about Jordan Lyles. It's about the decision to sign Jordan Lyles makes me nervous about the people in charge of making the decision to sign Jordan Lyles. That's what this is about.
I know. He's the whipping boy. He's the guy. It was Cal Eldred. Cal Eldred's gone, so there needs to be a new villain. The new villain is Jordan Lyles.
You're right. The 7-22 Kansas City Royals shouldn't have a villain at all. They're completely blameless in all of this.
But the point that this is your prediction sucks, and so it's not your fault because Jordan Lyles shouldn't be here. Our prediction sucks because we are Royals fans and we gobbled it up. Here's reality. Let's talk about reality. Here's the question that needs to be answered. What the blank is Bobby Witt Jr.? Right? Royals Review wrote a nice piece about it, right? Where they said, is he the next Hosmer? Well, I don't think so. I think he's better because, one, he's got 2 years in the big leagues already, or going to have 2 years in the big leagues before Hosmer ever got to the big leagues. All right? So I think that right there is something.
Actually, I think Hosmer was 21 as a rookie.
Was he?
He was. Yeah, they actually came up, believe it or not. I mean, we forget that because
I did
He barely ever developed after that.
Hang on.
No, I mean, to me, Witt has more potential, certainly just because of his position, right? He has defensive value.
Yeah, he was
Positional
21.
value,
You're
at
right.
least. He has
But
positional value, and he has speed. Like, there are other skills he has which is why we, frankly, were higher on him than
so we can be
even we
excited.
were on Hub.
But that's the question. That's the question. And then the question is, who was banging the drum for Bobby Witt Jr.? Was it because the rest of the industry said it's these two guys? Because the rest of the industry said Carlos Correa wasn't number one. And so now the industry quotes it because none of them said Carlos Correa should go number one, that he wasn't the consensus top guy. And the Astros don't really get credit for it because it was a signability thing. BS. They took the right guy in that draft. Later, they took the wrong guy in Mark Appel, but they took the right guy, and they should get the blame for Appel, and they should get the credit for Correa. Bobby Witt Jr. That's the issue. Do they have a guy that they took number 2 overall that was supposed to be can't miss and is going to be Javi Baez? You know who his comp is right now? Omar Infante. If you go to Baseball Reference, one of the things I like to do is take a look at Bobby Witt Jr., and you will find, you scroll down, and they give comps at similar age. Most similar by age 22. Omar Infante. That's the problem. And so what John Sherman, I assume, has is a working knowledge of whatever J.J. Piccolo said, this is what Bobby Witt Jr. will be. This is what he will be. And he damn well better be right. Right? Those are the things he needs to be right about. Did J.J. Piccolo say, listen, it's going to be ugly because this guy can't pitch, that guy can't pitch. He's not, I'm telling you, they're not good enough. If he's called his shots on all this, then he knows what he's got, and let's see what he does with it. But Bobby Witt Jr. being the number 2 overall pick, I could give a rat's ass what Jordan Lyles does. But Bobby Witt Jr. has to be good. Has to be good. And if he's not, he has to be traded before the rest of baseball knows he's not good. That's the real issue.
Okay. First off, in terms of should they have drafted him, did they draft him just because of the industry consensus, or was he the second best player in the draft? I mean, you look at the guys who were taken immediately after him. It's hard to find somebody's like, oh, we should have taken this guy.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. Well, sure, but if we're going to discuss this now, I mean, the third pick was Andrew Vaughn, who hit the walk-off home run today for the White Sox, but is a limited first base. I don't know anybody. I think if you offered Bobby Witt for Andrew Vaughn right now, the White Sox would.
I'm not even concerned with like handing a championship belt for the 2 years in. That's a waste of time. It doesn't matter. If he can't hit fastballs,
right?
Bobby Witt Jr. cannot hit the fastball.
The issue is he's not developing. Just like Eric Hosmer, like he hasn't gotten any better since he reached the major leagues. Just like Eric Hosmer really never did, right? Mike Moustakas eventually got there after rebuilding his swing in his 5th season in the major leagues. Like, you and I could disagree all we want about JJ Piccolo, but please tell me that if you hear JJ Piccolo say you have to give 1,500 at bats to a player before you know what he is, will you please agree with me that at that moment he should just be like given his pink slip right then and there? If I hear another Royals general manager tell me you need 1,500 plate appearances to evaluate a guy as a way to just excuse, being a disappointment 3 seasons into your career, my head will explode. Because you look around the sport, that's not normal. These guys should be taking a step forward. Adley Rutschman needed about 1,500 seconds in the major leagues to prove himself as an elite player. And those two a year ago were neck and neck. Some organizations, some publications had Rutschman 1 and Witt 2. Some had Witt 1 and Rutschman 2. The other guy on that list that was also up there was Julio Rodriguez. Julio Rodriguez, who, massive long-term contract, I believe rookie of the year. Like, Bobby Witt, of those 3, who's the one that stands out right now as a vaguely disappointing player? It's Bobby Witt. He's still young enough. He could absolutely turn things around, but he's not. Like you said, he has a weakness. The article Royals Review talked about the comparison with him and Hosmer, in that they both had one specific issue with their profile that they never really addressed. With Hosmer, it was he never learned to hit the ball in the air. He would hit line drive. He'd 110 mile an hour exit velocity into the ground. Well, that's a double play if you hit it the wrong spot. But with Witt, he swings at too many pitches. He's still chasing. I think his chase rate is still like, bottom 20% in the sport. And specifically, like you said, he has trouble catching up to a fastball, which is a weird thing you would think for a phenom to have trouble with. It's concerning. It's very concerning. And I think he's like Hosmer. Even if he never fixes that flaw, it doesn't mean he's a terrible player. It doesn't mean he doesn't deserve to play. He'll probably be an average player. But this was the guy who was supposed to be the cornerstone of the franchise and the cornerstone of this rebuild, and the guy who batted second or third in your next playoff game. And if he turns out to just be an average-ish player, not only is that set your rebuild back dramatically, it calls into question everything that got him to that point, both in terms of drafting him and then in terms of developing him. And again, that's why the comparison here to Lyles is it's not about the player only. It's about everything that went into putting that player in that position. And when you look at other organizations and their players succeed right out of the gate, Corbin Carroll, who was in that same draft, by the way, drafted by the Diamondbacks. You know who the Diamondbacks scouting director was then? Derek Ladnier. Derek Ladnier, who was the Royals scouting director when they drafted Greinke, Alex Gordon, I believe Billy Butler, and I believe Hosmer, and then Dayton Moore let him go.
Under Allard Baird.
Yeah, exactly.
Who was a favorite whipping boy of yours?
Was he not your favorite whipping boy? My God, have you?
No,
looked?
He's not. He's not, because armed with $20,000 to spend in Latin.
Well, that's the thing. When you say he's my whipping boy,
you just rattled off his first round picks.
Well, I didn't mention Colt Griffin and Roscoe Crosby and Chris Labansky. Like, there were some turkeys in there too. But when you say my whipping boy,
they had enough money to sign 5 guys. Like, that's the thing. I've had the conversations with the guys. They did not have the money to sign anybody that belonged up there. They took Chris Lubansky and they took Michael Stodolka because they were given no money to sign anyone.
I agree with you. The fact that you brought up Allard Baird as my whipping boy from 17 years ago. What we know now, even then when he was the whipping boy, he was the face of the organization. It wasn't. David Glass was the whipping.
You're missing the bigger overall point. Picking individuals and saying this guy's the problem is the easy thing for people to do, and it's not that simple. Just as the point, Allard Baird, this is what you're talking about. The decisions. Allard Baird was the front guy for the incompetence of the Glass family, and not equipping them and wanting to change the economics of baseball more than they actually wanted to win. Allard Baird was and still is a highly paid scout with winning teams, and is very much listened to. Has been with the Red Sox, has been with the Mets. I'm not sure where he is.
He's actually with the Diamondbacks right now.
Diamondbacks. I mean, listen, trust me. He knows what he's doing when it comes to players. And I had the conversations with people at those times and why they were making those picks. And it wasn't because they thought Chris Lubansky should go 5.
Oh, I understand. And I mean, there were the years where they were literally giving college seniors $1,000 to sign. Yes. And they somehow got Mike Avila's out of that, which was impressive in its own right. My point, I'm just making the point. Here's a guy who actually succeeded under very difficult conditions at times and drafted in that same draft Corbin Carroll. But Corbin Carroll came up. I'm not saying that the Royals should have drafted Corbin Carroll. I'm wondering if they did draft Corbin Carroll, would he be succeeding right out of the chute like he has with Arizona?
Totally valid.
Right, totally. And that is the concern. Like, again, I feel like we're arguing over things that we actually agree about. Like, I'm not saying fire JJ Picollo today. I'm just saying the problem in the organization, if we continue on this path, may be bigger than firing Dayton Moore and firing Mike Matheny and firing Cal Eldred. There is more to the problem. And I really hoped a month ago, I was full of optimism that the changes they had made, that JJ was on the right path, that he understood what the problems were, that he had taken steps to fix them. And now I'm worried that the rot goes deeper. And I don't think that's unreasonable when the team is freaking 7-22 and we're both, discussing whether or not
And I
this is the
don't
most
disagree.
disappointing month in the history of the franchise.
And I don't disagree. And that's the question that had to be asked at the time of the move. And then afterwards, the question that had to be asked to JJ Picollo. What we don't know is what is the answer he told John Sherman? If he told John Sherman, we should fight for 500 this year and we should be a playoff team next year. If that's what he told John Sherman, then he does not have an accurate view of what he has. If he told John Sherman, that's why I brought up the idea last week, it's going to be hell. We're worse than you realize. We've worked on that. I'm not going to say he sat there and was Dayton, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. But if he said, look, I had my marching orders, I carried them out, but I said, not this guy, not that guy, go for this guy, go for that guy. And he needs a year to start flushing out what he doesn't like, because he wants to get something for it. It's a worthwhile exercise. Don't know if it'll pay off, but it's impossible for anyone. Like right now, the only difference we would be feeling right now, had they brought in somebody other than JJ Picollo from the outside, the only thing that would be different is we'd have more patience because it's a new guy. But the team would not be any better right now.
No, but we're not. I don't think we're having a discussion because the team isn't necessarily better. It's also because the players that they've committed to seem to be, where again, some of the decisions they have made. Hunter Dozier's still playing out there. The Bradley thing, Lyles. Like there are decisions that they have made. Franmil Reyes. Look, yes, it's only been 82 plate appearances, but Brent Rooker, Franmil Reyes, like they basically chose. They went out and signed Franmil Reyes, gave him money, and let Brent Rooker go. One decision like this, every team makes mistakes. I mean, the Dodgers traded Jordan Alvarez before he'd ever played a professional game for, it was Josh Fields, like a reliever, like half a season of a reliever, which again is another example of why trading relievers when you can is the right thing to do.
Agreed.
One of the things the Orioles have done, the Orioles have some great guys in their bullpen. They took Jorge Lopez. Remember Jorge Lopez was in the Royals forever, and they insisted on using him as a starter. Never succeeded as a starter. Went to Baltimore, turned into a reliever, turned great. They traded him last offseason. One of the guys they got for him was this Cuban pitcher, Cano, I believe his name is, who's like up to like 11 hitting innings this year, no hits, no walks. I think he hit a batter. He's got insane numbers. But like, these are the decisions we want to see the Royals making. JJ's going to get that chance. They didn't trade Barlow last trading deadline. They didn't trade him over the winter. They'll have a chance to do it again this year. Josh Stillmont's rounding into form. Are they going to be able to trade Josh Stillmont? Aroldis Chapman should be out the door the second they can get rid of him, right? And if they bring in a lot of talent, great. And if I'm very curious to see their draft strategy this year because, like you said, it is the first year that JJ's in charge of the draft. I assume he had more input in the draft last year than in previous years, and we both like the fact that they took 2 college hitters. Gavin Cross has not worked out. I'm muted. It's been a month, and Caden Wallace looks good.
I'm going to tell you, I've had conversations. Gavin Cross was picked by Dayton Moore. Good or bad, right or wrong,
and,
whatever he is.
Well, and we, without, I'm not going to be the one to bring it up, but we both know that there are, reasons that Dayton Moore might have had a soft spot for Gavin Cross above and beyond his talent. And it's not that he wasn't a talented player and, was a top 100 prospect coming into the season, but I totally understand what you're saying, that Dayton Moore would have made that pick.
Yeah, that was his pick for sure. All right, let's end on, we covered a lot of ground, kind of around some of the things we were going to do. And for our sanities, we're not going 95 minutes tonight, which, by the way, always enjoyed the discussion first and foremost with Rany. So if anyone thinks we're actually angry at each other, we're not. We're just passionate Royals fans. Should we end with the minor league minute?
Yeah, let's. We try to always end on an optimistic note, and the only way to ever do that is to get as far away from the major leagues as possible. So, I mean, it's just the reality of it.
So straight to what is it, Quad Cities? Is that, or Columbia?
Well, we're actually going to go to Omaha this week. I figure let's just keep it simple. In part because,
by the way, I was in Omaha last weekend. Went to eat Sunday night. Said, "Hey, you guys get I know the AAA team, the Storm Chasers, the AAA team for the Royals. You get requests to put the Royals game on here?" And he's like, not really. So, well, can you put it on? He goes, do you know what channel it's on? I'm like, no, I don't know on the charter cable system of Omaha, which I looked it up for him and told him, and he went and put it on. And one guy went, boo. Like, because he was mostly because he was watching the NBA game. But anyway, in Omaha, they weren't watching.
In Omaha, I mean, you're 3 hours from Kansas City, and nobody wants to have anything to do with the Royals. That's man, 2015 is a long time ago, my friend.
If I told that story last week, I apologize. I didn't think I told it last week, but anyway.
No, you did.
All right, so we'll end with a positive. We're going to go to Omaha.
Yeah, well, the positive, I mean, I feel like we shouldn't go too far into the minor leagues because I want to give some hope for this year. But I think it's time that the Royals bring Summit Taylor up to the major leagues in part because, Michael Massey not having a good year. Like, not to be negative again, but look, I make mistakes. We all make mistakes. I'd like to think where I maybe differ a little from Dayton Moore is that I don't stubbornly cling to them forever. Like, Michael Massey was my breakout pick this year. I'm willing to concede I probably was wrong. All right. He finally drew a walk yesterday on a pitch clock violation. All right. To go with his 31 strikeouts, his 167 batting average. I don't like it's not just, MJ and Melendez is hitting 170, but I think his swing decisions at the plate at least make sense. Michael Massey looks lost at the plate. And it'd be one thing if you didn't have another option there. But Summit Taylor, who's 24 years old, so he's actually, a year younger than Massey? About 4 months younger than Massey, is hitting 337 in Omaha. He's got a 404 on base, a 480 slugging. He's got 12 steals in 24 games. This is the guy, one of the two guys they got in the Witt Merrifield trade. Again, by the way, trading veterans for prospects works. Even after Witt Merrifield had lost 80% of his value, they got an interesting arm in Max Castillo, who's not having a good year in AAA this year, but they got two flyers. The other flyer, Summit Taylor, who was hurt when they traded for him, which is probably why they got him at a discount, came back in the Arizona Fall League and now is fully healthy. I'm not saying he's going to be a star. I'm not even sure he's going to be an average second baseman. I think he's better than Michael Massey right now. I think he'd be an interest. He's a guy who can play the outfield. He might be a good utility player going forward. But you know what? You bring up a guy like this, and every so often they turn into Witt Merrifield, and suddenly they keep hitting at the major league level, and suddenly you've got an everyday player up the middle. Let's find out, because Michael Massey needs a reset, and this will benefit both players at the same time. He's already on the 40-man roster. I think it's time to make the move.
Yeah, a couple things. One, there needs to be kind of a statement like, this isn't good enough for here.
Exactly.
Right? Like, we like you. We're not giving up on you. We're not releasing you. We're just sending you down. But this is not good enough. They will talk about things, and they are much more qualified than I am. Quality of at-bats, not taking it out to the field with them. There are a lot of things, and the scouting world that I think are harder for us, laymen to get our arms around, that I will listen to a point. And then at some point it's like, come on, enough is enough. So I'm with you on that. The other thing is, what's notable for me, he is the only hitter that I have not clicked on yet this year. He's the only hitter that is not in red on my Baseball Reference 2023 Royals page, that does not show as having been recently clicked. That's how I'm like, what do I need to look at this? I know it's terrible. But it's kind of odd, because you think I would have been clicking on it because I'd be looking up some Curtis worst start since,
right?
Worst stretch since. So it does surprise me a little bit, but he's the only guy I haven't bothered to click and say, what did he do the other night? Or what was this? Or what's he done the last 5 games? Or what's his over, I've had no reason seemingly to click on Michael Massey's page. That's scary. That is scary. Listen, it's frightful times for the Kansas City Royals right now. There's no doubt. We're going to get to the 40-game mark, not next show, but the show after that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to be knocking on the door of the draft. And it'll all be fixed there, where they have the 8th pick, 7th pick?
8th, I believe the 8th pick, yes.
8th pick.
Yay, yes. Lottery. And remember, unfortunately, the draft is now in July. They moved it. I know, and which it's like, throw us a bone, man. We have to wait another month for any kind of optimism. So,
Yeah, I don't get it, which speaks to just how bad their trade deadlines become, because I know why they did it. They want everybody to finish the World Series and everything. But, take a page from some of these other sports that have something going every month of the year, right? The calendar is still going. Baseball is the weird one that most of its off season is in season.
Right.
That's one of the weird things about it. All right, so we will watch. I think at some point, I think you're going to get your wish sometime this week. I think Taylor's got to come up. You can't keep going out. Although, did Massey get a couple of hits?
Well, he was hot earlier in the week, and then he was not hot again. He didn't play today, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and we will mention Nick Prado has come up and looked good at the plate with just a handful of at bats. He was up earlier, but now has hit the ball and is slashing 400, 438.
Well, it's strange because he was hitting terribly at his performance numbers in Omaha, but very clearly the Royals were doing something with him because his strikeout rate was dramatically lower, even as he was not hitting for average at all. And so I was intrigued by that. And we'll finish with that with the minor league minute. Nick Prado, it on the one hand, it's like you don't want to take away his power. You don't want to sacrifice power for contact. But on the other hand, I had become increasingly convinced that his strikeout rate was just too much. It was too high the way he was last year to succeed at the major league level. Like I felt like he did need to make a change. So I was intrigued by the fact that they'd cut his contact issues down, even though he wasn't hitting. Then they brought him up and he's hitting. But what's really weird is I think in 20 plate appearances in the majors, he struck out 10 times. So the his batting average has gone way up, but so has the strikeout rate. So like everything else with the Royals team, I don't understand what the hell's going on with Nick Prado. So
our Kaufman Corner podcast is brought to you by GAN Asphalt and Concrete. Now hiring for all positions: project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, crew members, starting pay up to $30 per hour. Based upon your experience, paid time off, insurance. Those are just a couple of the benefits you can get if you go to work for one of the fastest growing companies in Kansas City, GAN Asphalt and Concrete. Find them online at ganasphalt.com. Proudly serving the entire metro area. Kansas City's nationally recognized full service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. If you've got parking lot problems at your business, it is not a problem anymore if you've called GAN Asphalt and Concrete, making parking lot problems disappear in KC since 1994 with free consultations, no commissions, and in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at ganasphalt.com. One contractor, all things parking lot. That is GAN Asphalt and Concrete. So for the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much. We will see you next week at Kaufman Corner.